The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity didn't get one chance, no second request. Part 1. The Verdict. Ambassador Cole stood alone in the center of the great assembly hall. The chamber stretched upward for nearly a mile, its walls lined with floating platforms where representatives from 847 species watched in silence. Some had faces she could read. Most did not. But she had learned long ago that body language was universal, and right now, every creature in this room was holding its breath. The voting crystals floated above each platform, glowing with the colors of decision. Blue for exile, gold for mercy. Had counted them herself as they changed, one by one over the past 6 hours. She had watched hope die slowly, like a candle burning down to nothing. High Arbiter rose from his central throne. He was a being, 12 feet tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light of 1,000 crystals. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language known to the galaxy. "The vote is complete," he announced. 612 species have voted in favor. 235 have voted against. Earth is hereby sentenced to exile beyond the isolation barrier. All human vessels must withdraw from galactic space within 72 standard hours. Any human found beyond the barrier after this time will be terminated without warning. Felt the words hit her like physical blows, but she did not flinch. She had prepared for this. She had known, deep in her heart, that the elder species had already made their decision long before this vote was called. "I request the right of appeal," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Under Article 7 of the Founding Charter, any species facing exile may present new evidence before a secondary tribunal." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "Ambassador Cole, your species was never formally admitted to the Galactic Council. You attended as observers only. Therefore, you have no rights under our charter. There will be no appeal." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Noticed that several platforms shifted uncomfortably. Not everyone agreed with this interpretation, but no one spoke up. High above the planet, Captain stood on the bridge of the Starward Hope and watched the broadcast on the main screen. His crew of 63 humans sat at their stations in absolute silence. Lieutenant Danny Price, the youngest officer on board, had tears running down his face, though he made no sound. "Captain," the navigation officer said quietly, "should I plot a course back to Earth?" Did not answer immediately. He was watching Cole on the screen, standing alone against an entire galaxy. 52 years old, gray hair pulled back in a simple knot, wearing the plain blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She looked small down there, but she did not look defeated. "Not yet," said, "she is not finished." In the assembly hall took a slow breath. She had one more thing to say, and she intended to say it clearly. "High Arbiter," she began, "I will not beg. I will not plead. You have made your decision based on fear, not evidence. You claim that humanity is aggressive, but we have never started a war with any species. You claim we contaminate other cultures, but every species that has traded with us has done so willingly. You claim we expand too fast, but we have only settled worlds that were empty and unwanted." She paused, letting her words settle into the silence. "The truth is simple. You are afraid of us, not because of what we have done, but because of what we might become. And so you have chosen to lock us away, to pretend we do not exist, to hope that we will fade into nothing behind your barrier." Leaned forward. "Are you finished, Ambassador?" Almost. Looked up at the thousands of watching faces. "I want every species here to remember this moment. Remember that you were given a choice between partnership and fear, and you chose fear. Remember that when the consequences of this decision arrive at your doors, you had the chance to choose differently." She straightened her shoulders. "You have made your decision, now you will live with it." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked toward the exit. The doors opened automatically before her. She did not look back. Counselor watched the human ambassador leave. The reptilian had voted for exile, pressured by her own government, but now she felt something cold settling in her stomach. The human had not screamed or threatened. She had simply stated facts and walked away. Somehow, that was far more unsettling. On the Starward Hope, Captain finally spoke. "Lieutenant Price, open a channel to the ambassador's shuttle." "Channel open, sir." "Ambassador Cole, this is Captain. I am sending a shuttle to bring you aboard. We will escort you home." His voice came through the speakers, tired but steady. "Thank you, Captain. I could use a cup of coffee." Almost smiled. "I think we can manage that." He turned to his crew. "You heard the verdict. We have 72 hours to leave galactic space. I know you are angry. I know you are hurt. But we are going to leave with our heads high and our dignity intact. We will not give them the satisfaction of seeing us break." Danny Price wiped his face and nodded. "What happens when we get home, Captain?" Looked at the stars on the main screen. Somewhere out there, the isolation barrier was waiting to close around Earth like a prison. But he had served in the fleet for 25 years, and he had learned one important lesson in that time. Humans did not give up. They adapted. They survived. They found a way. "When we get home," he said slowly, "we figure out what comes next. This is not the end, Lieutenant. This is just the beginning of a very different story." The Starward Hope turned away from Concordia Prime and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the assembly hall emptied as species returned to their own worlds, most of them already forgetting the small blue planet they had just condemned. But Cole sat in the shuttle beside Captain and stared out at the passing stars. She was not thinking about what she had lost. She was thinking about what humanity would do next. "They made a mistake," she said quietly. Nodded, "Yes, they did. They think we will just disappear. We will not." Turned to look at him. "No," she agreed, "we will not." And somewhere deep in the void, the ancient machinery of the isolation barrier began to hum, preparing to seal humanity away from the galaxy forever. The ones who built it, millions of years ago, had designed it to contain threats, but they had never imagined a species like humanity. No one ever did. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity didn't get one chance, no second request. Part 2: The Gathering Storm. 3 months had passed since the isolation barrier sealed around the Sol system. The galaxy expected Earth to fall into chaos. They expected riots, starvation, and collapse. They expected desperate messages begging for mercy, for a second chance, for anything at all. They received only silence. President Caroline Nash stood at the window of her office in Geneva, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. At 61 years old, she had seen humanity face many challenges: wars, plagues, climate disasters, but nothing had ever united the species quite like this. Being told they were unwanted had somehow made 8 billion people remember what they had in common. "The production reports from the lunar factories are in," Admiral Greg Torres said from behind her. He was a stocky man with gray temples and hands that had seen combat. "We have tripled our ship output in the past month. Every nation on Earth is contributing resources." Caroline nodded without turning. "And the research division?" "Dr. Burke is waiting to brief you. She says they have found something important." The president finally turned from the window. "Then let us not keep her waiting." Dr. Burke was 34 years old, with messy brown hair and the kind of energy that made everyone around her feel tired. She stood in the briefing room surrounded by holographic displays, practically bouncing on her feet as Caroline and Torres entered. "Madam President, Admiral, thank you for coming so quickly." She waved her hand and the displays shifted to show a complex wave pattern. "I have been studying the isolation barrier for the past 3 months. At first, I thought it was Council technology, something they built specifically to contain us. But I was wrong." Torres frowned. "Wrong how?" "The barrier is ancient. I mean really ancient. My team estimates it is at least 50 million years old, probably older. The current council species did not build it. They just figured out how to turn it on. Caroline stepped closer to the display. So someone else created this technology, someone who came before. Exactly, and here is the interesting part. Pulled up another display showing the barrier's energy signature. The technology is incredibly advanced, but it has weaknesses, small ones. I believe we can create a temporary breach just big enough to send a ship through. The room went silent. Tors was the first to speak. You are saying we can escape? Not escape exactly. The breach would only stay open for a few minutes, and it would take weeks to recharge the equipment to do it again. But yes, we could send someone through. Caroline considered this carefully. Breaking through the barrier would be seen as an act of aggression by the Council, but staying trapped forever was not an option either. Continue your research, Doctor. I want to know exactly what is possible before we make any decisions. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young aide entered, looking pale. Madam President, we have a visitor. Someone came through the barrier. Everyone stared at her. That is impossible, Tors said. Nothing can get through from the outside. Apparently something can, sir. A small trading vessel just appeared near Jupiter. The pilot is requesting asylum. He says he has information we need to hear. The alien's name was, and he was a species of small furred beings known for their trading skills. He sat in the interrogation room wrapped in a thermal blanket, his large eyes darting nervously around the room. They will kill me if they find out I came here, he said as Caroline and Tors entered. The Council has made it a capital offense to have any contact with humans. Caroline sat down across from him. Then why did you come? His ears flattened against his head. Because what they did to you was wrong, and because many of us know it. The vote was manipulated, President Nash. 3 elder species, they pressured smaller species to vote for Exile. They threatened trade sanctions, military action, anything to get the votes they needed. Tors leaned forward. Why? What did they gain from removing us? Humans were becoming too successful. Your goods were cheaper, your ships were faster, your ideas were spreading to every corner of the galaxy. In another 100 years, you would have dominated galactic trade. The elder species could not allow that. Caroline absorbed this information quietly. It confirmed what she had suspected all along. This was never about human aggression or cultural contamination. It was about power and fear. You said you had information we needed, she said. What else? Reached into his coat and pulled out a small data crystal. Trade reports from the past 3 months. The galactic economy is already suffering without human participation. Several species are facing shortages of goods that only Earth produced efficiently. And there is something else. He hesitated, his whiskers twitching. There are rumors of a plague spreading through the outer territories, something the Council Medical Corps cannot identify. It started on a mining colony and has already spread to 11 other worlds. Tors and Caroline exchanged glances. A plague that the advanced Council species could not cure. That was unusual. Why are you telling us this? Caroline asked. Looked at her with those large, sad eyes. Because someday, probably soon, they are going to need your help, and when that day comes, you will have a choice to make. I wanted you to know the truth before that choice arrives. He stood up, still wrapped in his blanket. I cannot stay long. I need to leave before anyone notices I am gone. But remember what I told you, President Nash. Not everyone in the galaxy agreed with what was done to your people. Some of us remember what humanity brought to the stars, and we miss it already. After left, Caroline stood alone in her office, holding the data crystal. Outside, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond the invisible wall of the barrier, billions of beings were going about their lives, pretending that Earth no longer existed. But Earth was still here, and its people were not just surviving, They were preparing. She pressed the intercom on her desk. "Get me Ambassador Cole and Admiral. We need to talk about the future." Arrived within the hour, his new Admiral's stars still shiny on his collar. Cole came with him, looking more rested than she had in months. They sat together as Caroline shared everything had told them. "A plague," said thoughtfully, "and they cannot cure it." "Not yet," Caroline replied. "But if it spreads, if it becomes serious enough, they will eventually look for help wherever they can find it." "Understood immediately. You want us to be ready to offer that help." "I want us to be ready for anything." Caroline looked at both of them, her eyes hard with determination. "They threw us away like garbage. They expected us to die quietly in our little corner of space. We are going to prove them wrong, and when the time comes, we are going to show them exactly what kind of people they rejected." Nodded slowly, "And if they ask for our help?" Caroline was quiet for a long moment. "Then we will give it, not because they deserve it, but because that is who we are. That is what makes us human." Outside the window, Earth continued to turn, blue and green and alive. The galaxy had voted to forget about this little world, but humanity had a long memory and an even longer reach. The storm was gathering, and soon everyone would see what it meant to underestimate the species from Sol. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity didn't get one chance, no second request. Part 3: The Uninvited Guest. 6 months after the exile, the plague they called the Withering had spread to 47 worlds. Council medical teams worked around the clock, but nothing they tried made any difference. The infected simply faded away, their cells breaking down over weeks of agony until there was nothing left but dust. Counselor sat in her private chambers staring at the spots appearing on her scaled arms. The Withering had finally found her, just as it had found millions of her people. She had perhaps 2 months left, maybe less. Her assistant entered quietly. "Counselor, the latest reports from the medical corps." "I already know what they say." Did not look up. "No progress, no hope, the same words they have been saying for months." "There is one other option, Counselor." Finally raised her head. Her assistant was young, barely past her first molting, but there was something serious in her eyes. "The humans," the assistant said quietly. "They had the most advanced medical research in the galaxy before the exile. If anyone could find a cure, it would be them. The humans are gone, sealed behind the barrier where they belong. But what if they could be reached? What if someone asked for their help?" Felt cold spread through her body that had nothing to do with the plague. Contacting humans was a capital offense. Even suggesting it could mean execution. But she was already dying. What did she have to lose? "Leave me," she said. "I need to think." On Earth, Dr. Burke had not slept in 3 days. Her team had intercepted fragments of Council communications about the Withering, and what she had learned horrified her. The plague was not natural. It was a weapon, something ancient and terrible that had been accidentally awakened. The genetic markers matched technology from the precursor era, she explained to President Nash during an emergency briefing. Someone found an old weapons cache and accidentally released it. The plague was designed to wipe out entire species, and the current council races have no immunity whatsoever. Nash leaned forward, "But we do. Humans are not affected. Our biology is different enough that the weapon does not recognize us as targets. And more importantly, I think we can develop a treatment. Our immune systems have certain properties that could be modified into a vaccine." Admiral spoke up from the corner of the room. "How long would that take?" "A few weeks, maybe less if we push hard. But there is a problem." Pulled up a star map. "The treatment needs to be administered in person. We would have to send a team through the barrier, deliver it directly to infected populations, and then get out before the council arrests or kills them." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was being asked. They would be risking human lives to save the same people who had thrown them away. Nash closed her eyes briefly. Do it. Develop the treatment as fast as you can. Madam President said carefully, are you sure about this? These people voted to exile us. They wanted us gone. I know what they did. Nash opened her eyes and there was something fierce in them. But I will not let billions die when we have the power to save them. That is not who we are. That is not who we will ever be. 2 weeks later, a small unmarked vessel slipped through a temporary breach in the isolation barrier. On board were Dr. Burke, Medical Officer Grant, and 4 volunteer security personnel. Admiral watched them go from the bridge of his flagship, his hands gripped tight behind his back. Godspeed, he whispered. The journey to the took 6 days. They traveled in silence, avoiding major shipping lanes and council patrol routes. Grant spent the time reviewing medical protocols while checked and rechecked their supply of treatments. Are you scared? Asked one night as they sat in the cramped galley. Considered the question. A little, but mostly I am angry. These people threw us out because they were afraid of how successful we were becoming, and now they are dying because of their own carelessness, and we are the only ones who can help. Do you think they deserve our help? No, met sighs. But that is not the point. We did not come here because they deserve it. We came because helping people who need it is what humans do, even when those people hate us. They landed on the at night, setting down in a remote area far from the capital city. Counselor was waiting for them, wrapped in a hooded cloak to hide her face. I did not think you would actually come, she said as the humans emerged from their vessel. Walked up to her, medical kit in hand. We almost did not. Show me your arm. Pushed back her sleeve, revealing the dark spots of infection. Examined them clinically, then loaded a syringe with pale blue liquid. This will feel cold for a moment. The treatment takes about 6 hours to fully integrate with your system. By tomorrow, the spread should stop. By next week, you should start healing. The injection was quick. Felt the cold spreading through her veins, then a strange warmth that she had not felt in months. Why? She asked suddenly. I voted for your exile. I helped send your people away. Why would you save me? Put away her equipment. Because that is what separates us from people like you. You made your decision based on fear. We make ours based on who we want to be. Over the next 3 days, the human team worked without rest. They treated hundreds of, moving from village to village under cover of darkness. Word spread quickly, and soon infected from across the region were seeking them out. But their luck could not last forever. On the 4th morning, woke to the sound of engines overhead. She rushed outside to find their vessel surrounded by council security forces, weapons drawn and aimed at the small group of humans. By order of the Galactic Council, a mechanical voice announced, you are under arrest for illegal incursion into protected space. Surrender immediately or be terminated. Looked at, then at the security personnel who were slowly raising their hands. There was no point in fighting. They had known this was a possibility from the beginning. We surrender, called out. But for the record, we came here to save lives. Every person we treated will live now. Whatever you do to us, you cannot change that. The soldiers moved forward to restrain them, but as they were led away, noticed something strange. Many of the civilians who had gathered to watch were not looking at the humans with hatred. They were looking at them with something closer to gratitude. And standing at the edge of the crowd, her hood pulled low over her face, Counselor watched the humans being taken away. Her arm, where the injection had been given, was already starting to heal. She had a choice to make now. She could stay silent and let these humans die for their compassion, or she could speak up and risk everything. Looking down at her healing scales made her decision. It was time to tell the truth. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity didn't get one chance, no second request. Part 4: The Reckoning. The Great Assembly Hall had not seen such chaos in centuries. Representatives shouted at each other across platforms. accusations flying like weapons. In the center of it all, Dr. Burke and Grant stood in energy restraints, surrounded by armed guards. High Arbiter slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. "Silence! This tribunal will have order." The noise gradually faded, though the tension remained thick enough to touch. "The humans before us stand accused of illegal incursion into galactic space," announced. "The punishment for this crime is death. Does the accused have anything to say before sentencing?" Before could speak, a voice rang out from the entrance. "They have a legal defender, High Arbiter, and that defender has quite a lot to say." Ambassador Cole walked into the chamber, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She wore her diplomatic uniform, pressed and perfect, and her expression was calm as ice. "Ambassador Cole," said, his compound eyes narrowing, "you have no standing in this court. Humanity was expelled from galactic affairs." "I am not here as a representative of humanity," reached the central platform and stood beside, and "I am here as a private citizen offering legal counsel to prisoners facing execution. Article 12 of your founding charter guarantees that right to anyone, regardless of species." A murmur rippled through the assembly. His mandibles clicked with irritation, but he could not deny her. The charter was clear. "Very well, proceed with your defense." Turn to face the watching delegates. "Let me make sure I understand the charges correctly. My clients are accused of illegally entering galactic space. The purpose of their entry was to deliver medical treatment to populations dying from a plague that your own medical corps could not cure. They saved thousands of lives, and for this, you want to execute them." "The law is clear," a delegate shouted from above. "Any human found beyond the barrier faces termination." "The law is unjust," replied calmly. "But let us set that aside for a moment. Let us talk about why my clients had to sneak in like criminals to save your people. Let us talk about the Exile itself." Leaned forward. "The Exile is not on trial here." "Perhaps it should be." Pulled a small device from her pocket and activated it. Holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing documents, communications, and financial records. These files were provided by an anonymous source within the council. They show that the vote to exile Earth was manipulated from the beginning. The chamber erupted again. Staff slammed repeatedly until quiet returned. Continued, pointing to specific documents as they floated in the air. 3 species coordinated the exile, and the. They threatened smaller species with trade sanctions and military action if they did not vote for exile. They fabricated evidence of human aggression. They suppressed positive reports about human contributions to galactic society. "This is lies," the delegate screamed. "Human propaganda." "Is it?" A new voice joined the conversation. Counselor rose from her platform, her healing arm visible for all to see. "I was one of those who voted for exile. I was told that if I voted against it, my people would face economic ruin. I was told that humans were dangerous and needed to be contained. But now I have seen the truth with my own eyes." She pointed at N. "These humans came to my world at great personal risk. They treated me and hundreds of my people when we were dying. They asked for nothing in return. Does this sound like the behavior of a dangerous species?" More voices joined in. Delegates from worlds that had been treated by the human team began sharing their own testimonies. The evidence of manipulation was overwhelming. But the true revelation came from an unexpected source. A scientist, visibly trembling, rose from his platform. "I need to confess something," he said. "The plague, the withering, it is our fault. An exploration team found an ancient weapons cache in forbidden space. We tried to study it secretly, and we accidentally released the pathogen. We have been covering it up for months." The chamber went absolutely silent. "The weapon was precursor technology," the scientist continued, "designed to eliminate species that resisted their rule. Our medical corps could not find a cure because the weapon was specifically engineered to defeat our kind of biology. But humans are different. Their immune systems evolved on a different path. They were the only ones who could save us, and we had already thrown them away. Sat frozen on his throne. His entire species, had been one of the three pushing for exile. Every terrible decision was now exposed for the galaxy to see. High above, in orbit around the Council Station, Admiral received an update from Earth. His fleet was in position, hidden just beyond the barrier's outer edge. If the trial went badly, he had orders to breach the barrier and extract the prisoners by force. To President Nash, he said quietly into a secure channel, "The trial is reaching a turning point. Do I stand down?" Nash's voice came back, strained with tension. "Hold position. We may not need you, but be ready." In the assembly hall, the tide was turning. Species that had voted for exile were now demanding answers. The coalition that had orchestrated the exile was falling apart under the weight of its own lies. Cole stood in the center of it all, calm as ever. She waited until the chaos subsided, then spoke again. "I am not asking you to forgive what was done to my people. I am not asking for apologies or reparations. I am simply asking you to look at these two women standing before you. They knew the risks. They knew they would probably be caught and killed. They came anyway because people were suffering and they could help." She looked directly at High Arbiter. "You have a choice to make. You can execute them for the crime of saving lives. You can prove that this council values its pride more than its principles. Or you can show the galaxy that justice still means something here." The silence stretched on. Stared down at the humans, at the evidence floating around them, at the delegates who were watching him with expectation and judgment. Finally, he spoke. "This tribunal is suspended. The prisoners will be held in comfortable quarters until a full investigation into the exile vote is completed. No sentence will be carried out." Let out a slow breath. It was not a victory, not yet, but it was a chance. As guards led and away looked back at, "Thank you," she mouthed silently. Nodded once, then turned back to face the assembly. There was still work to do. The truth was out now, but truth alone was not enough to change a galaxy. She needed to make them understand what they had lost. And more importantly, she needed to make them see what they could gain if they found the courage to start over. The reckoning was just beginning. The galaxy voted to exile Earth. Humanity didn't get one chance, no second request. Part 5: A New Dawn. 1 year had passed since the exile of Earth. The great assembly hall was full once again, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was uncertainty in the air, mixed with something that might have been hope. Dr. Burke and Grant sat in the observer section, no longer prisoners but honored guests. Admiral stood beside Ambassador Cole near the central platform. President Caroline Nash had made the journey herself, the first human leader to set foot on Concordia Prime. The investigation into the exile vote had taken months. When it was complete, the truth was undeniable. The leadership had been removed from power by their own people. Trade sanctions had been lifted. The isolation barrier remained in place, but only as a formality while the assembly decided what to do next. But no one expected what was about to happen. A door at the far end of the hall opened, and a figure emerged that made the entire assembly fall silent. She was ancient beyond measure, her body supported by a floating chair, her skin like cracked stone. Elder Prime, last surviving member of the founding species that had created the Galactic Council 3 million years ago, had not spoken in public for over 1,000 years. Until today. "I have watched," she said, her voice surprisingly strong despite her age. "For centuries, I have watched this council make decisions based on fear and greed and petty politics. I have watched great opportunities wasted and terrible mistakes repeated. I have watched, and I have said nothing, because I believed it was not my place to interfere." She paused, her ancient eyes scanning the assembly. I was wrong. The silence was absolute. Long ago, before any of your species reached the stars, the founders identified what we called keystone species. These were civilizations with unique potential, ones capable of bridging the gaps between different cultures and bringing unity where there was division. We watched for them across millions of years. We found very few. She turned her gaze toward the humans. Humanity was one of them. The founders saw your potential from the moment you first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. You were young and reckless and sometimes foolish, but you had something that most species lack. You had the ability to see beyond your own interests. You had compassion that extended even to those who hated you. Prime raised one ancient hand and pointed at Nash, at Cole. When this council voted to exile Earth, you did not respond with violence. You did not build weapons and plan revenge. You went silent, you rebuilt your society, and when your enemies were dying from their own mistakes, you came to save them anyway. Not because they deserved it, because that is who you are. She lowered her hand. I should have spoken up when the exile vote was called. I should have told you all what the founders knew. But I convinced myself that humanity would prove their worth on their own, and I was right. They have proven it in ways that no speech of mine ever could. High Arbiter rose from his throne. He looked diminished somehow, smaller than he had been a year ago. Elder Prime, what would you have us do? That is not my decision to make. She turned back to the humans. President Nash, the Council is prepared to offer Earth full membership with all rights and privileges that entails. Your exile will be officially ended. The barrier will be dismantled. You will have a permanent seat in this assembly. The offer hung in the air. Every eye in the chamber turned to Caroline Nash. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked at Cole, at Burke and Grant. She thought about the millions of humans who had suffered during the exile. She thought about the fear and anger that still lingered in so many hearts. And then she thought about what kind of future she wanted to build. Elder Prime, she said finally, I am grateful for your offer, but I must decline. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Cole looked surprised. Nash raised her hand for quiet. Let me explain. This council, as it exists today, is broken. It was corrupted by fear and manipulation. Good species were pressured into making terrible decisions. Bad actors faced no consequences for their actions until it was almost too late. Giving humanity a seat at this table will not fix these problems. It will only make us part of them. She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. What I propose instead is something more difficult but more important. I propose that we dissolve this council entirely and create something new in its place. A galactic assembly based on true equality, where no species has more power than another regardless of age or military strength. A government with transparent processes that cannot be easily manipulated. A union built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Mandibles clicked nervously. You are asking us to abandon everything we have built. I am asking you to build something better. Nash looked around the chamber. Every species here has something valuable to offer. Every voice matters, whether you have been in space for 1,000,000 years or 1,000. What you had before was a system that served the powerful and ignored everyone else. What I am proposing is a partnership of equals. The silence stretched on. Then slowly, a single delegate rose to her feet. Counselor, her scales now fully healed, stood in support of the human proposal. Another delegate joined her. Then another. Within minutes, hundreds of species were standing, their voices joining together in support of a new beginning. Prime watched with something like a smile on her ancient face. It seems, President Nash, that you have changed more than just humanity's fate today. Nash nodded. I hope so, I really hope so. 1 month later, the isolation barrier came down. Human vessels emerged from the Sol system for the first time in over a year, greeted not by weapons but by escorts of ships from 100 different species. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship as they crossed into open space. Beside him, Ambassador Cole watched the stars spread out before them, no longer a prison wall but an invitation. "They voted to exile us," Cole said quietly. "They wanted us gone forever." Nodded, "And now they are asking us to help them rebuild everything. Do you think we can do it? Change an entire galaxy?" Thought about everything they had been through. The exile, the plague, the trial, the revelations. He thought about Burke risking her life to save people who had rejected her. He thought about President Nash standing before the assembly and offering something no one expected. "Humans have always been good at impossible things," he said. "I think we can do this too." Cole smiled. "Then let us get to work." The new Galactic Charter was signed 6 months later. It was not perfect, and the work of building a better society would take generations. But for the first time in millions of years, every species in the galaxy had an equal voice and an equal stake in the future. And at the center of it all, humanity took its place not as conquerors or victims, but as partners and bridge builders. The species that had been thrown away had become the foundation of something new. They had voted to exile Earth. They had given humanity no chance and accepted no second request. But humanity had responded not with anger or vengeance, but with compassion and vision. And in doing so, they had changed everything. The stars had never looked brighter.